This day in sports history. And welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History. I am your host, Steve White. Happy to have you along. It is December 2nd, and on this day, up and down the sports history elevator, we had another great finish in an Iron Bowl, an Army-Navy game that did not go as it was supposed to, and Patrick Waugh turned his embarrassment into a trade demand. All that plus a non-sports fun fact about a product that you may use every day, but started off with a completely different purpose. And I'll start this episode off with a story about coaches from the same team having a bit of a disagreement on this night, right after this. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. I'm a big fan of shave soap. I've been using different brands for years, and I recently gave Sterling's shave soaps a try, and I've been very happy with the results. Sterling's shave soaps give you a great lather and a frictionless feel that allows the razor to glide right over the skin for a super close shave. No skin irritation and a clean, refreshing feel with no soapy residue after. I can tell you without a doubt, it's simply the best shave I've ever had. And my wife has noticed too. And here's the thing. With the ability to purchase 1-ounce sample pucks, you can try out different scents to find the right one for you. Give Sterling Soap a try today. Visit sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. On this day in 1985, it was a Monday night football game to remember for several reasons. It was week 13 of the season, and the undefeated Chicago Bears were in Miami, taking on an 8-4 Dolphins team. The Bears were rolling, coming off consecutive shutouts and outscoring teams 104-3 in the previous 3 games. They seemed destined to close out the regular season without a loss, march to the Super Bowl title, and equal the 1972 Dolphins in the record books as the only other undefeated team in NFL history. But the Dolphins had quarterback Dan Marino and a set of talented wide receivers preparing to put on a showcase and expose defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan's 46 defense. It did not take the Dolphins long to start lighting up the scoreboard. They scored on their opening drive on a 33-yard touchdown pass from Marino to Nat Moore. A couple of rushing touchdowns, a blocked punt setting up another Marino to Moore scoring strike in the closing minutes, and the Dolphins led 31-10 at halftime. Now, Bears head coach Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan had been butting heads for most of the season, and Ditka was not happy watching Dolphin wideouts Moore, Mark Duper, and Mark Clayton scorch Ryan's defense. And so he started screaming at Ryan to change up the game plan. Ryan told Ditka that he didn't need or want his advice and told him where he could put it. The two were screaming in each other's faces, and whether any punches were ever thrown is still up for debate, with more than a few saying Ditka offered to take their dispute outside. Well, back out in the hot and humid Orange Bowl for the second half, the Bears narrowed the margin to 31-17 early on, but good fortune, or maybe it was the luck of the 72 Dolphins that rubbed off on Marino on the next possession. Facing a 3rd and long, Marino tried to dump a pass over the middle, but the ball ricocheted off a Bears helmet. Here's Frank Gifford with the call for ABC's Monday Night Football telecast that night.
For a 3rd down and 6. Duper, Moore, and Clayton. Batted away. Into the arms of Clayton. Oh, and are things going right for the Dolphins tonight? 42-yard touchdown.
Marino's pass ricocheted off a Bears helmet at the line of scrimmage, popped into the air to a wide-open Mark Clayton running a dummy route. The Bears never threatened again in this game, and the Dolphins won 38-24, snapping Chicago's winning streak and their hopes for an undefeated season. But the loss did not derail the Bears' plans for the season. They won their remaining regular season games, marched through the playoffs, and Super Bowl shuffled their way to a 46-10 win over New England in Super Bowl 20. But on this night in '85, the Dolphins reigned supreme. The 2025 edition of the Iron Bowl went into the books this past weekend, but there are so many great moments to pull from the Alabama-Auburn series that it's hard not to keep talking about it. On this day in 1972, it was one of those memorable games, one that is remembered as Punt, Bama, Punt. At 10-0 and number 2 in the country, Alabama was in the conversation for a national championship. At 8-1, Auburn was number 9 in the country, but entered this game at Legion Field as 2-touchdown underdogs. Through the first 3 quarters, the Crimson Tide led 16-0, and they looked like they would cover that spread without a problem. The Tigers had trouble moving the ball down the field, but they did muster a drive early in the fourth quarter, but it resulted in only a field goal. Alabama fans started taunting Auburn fans at that point, pointing to the scoreboard and asking, "Can't you count? You need more points than that." Indeed they did, but they would not get them from their offense. Instead, Shug Jordan would dial up the pressure on defense and special teams. After forcing Bama into a punt situation, they decided to go after it. Here's Auburn's play-by-play man, Gary Sanders, with a call that afternoon.
Auburn trying to go after it. Here's the snap. They got it. Block kick. Ball's back to the 25. Picked up on the bounce at the 25-yard line. And in for a touchdown is David Langner.
That narrowed Bama's lead to 16-10. On the next Crimson Tide drive, Auburn's defense bent a little, but they didn't break, and they forced them into another punt situation. Might as well go after another one, right?
Roger Mitchell on the left, and Auburn is again going after the kick, as you might imagine. Greg Gant standing on his own 30. Auburn will try to block it. Auburn going after it. Here's a good snap. It is blocked! It is blocked! It's caught on the run! It's caught on the run! He's going to score! David Langner! David Langner has scored! And Auburn has tied the game! And Roger Mitchell blocked the kick!
Right place, right time. David Langner with 2 punt block recoveries for touchdown in the fourth quarter. And after the PAT, Auburn led 17-16 with 1:34 left in the game. Langner was not finished for the day, though. He had one more signature to put on this game.
The other wide out Wood on the other side. Here's Davis back to throw. Lots of time. He's away up the middle. Overthrown, intercepted at the 41. Auburn's ball. David Langner.
Punt, Bama, Punt not only went down as one of the all-time great meetings in the Iron Bowl series, but it's also been recognized as one of the great games in college football history, ranking in the top 100 on several lists. On this day in 1950, it was a surprise finish to the annual Army-Navy game. The Black Knights hadn't lost a game in nearly 3 seasons. They were ranked number 2 in the country, and a win against the midshipmen would keep their national championship dreams alive. Navy was not supposed to put up much of a fight. They had not beaten Army since 1943 and had only won 7 games total in the past 5 seasons. They were 2-6 coming into this one and were 3 touchdown underdogs. In front of 100,000 that included President Harry Truman at Philadelphia's Municipal Stadium, Navy decided to try something a little bit different. Instead of their standard single-wing attack, the Middies used a T formation and they passed out of it often. After an Army fumble in the second quarter, a couple of Bob Zastro completed passes put Navy on the Army 8-yard line. Zastro bowled his way into the end zone for the first points of the day. Navy went to the air to score their second touchdown just before the half, and they led 14-0. Defensively, Navy was running a different setup as well, going with a 6-man front and 2 linebackers. The Middies were able to shut down the powerful Army running attack. By halftime, Army had 3 yards in total offense and had only secured 1 first down. The only points that the Cadets could muster on this day were from their defense. Army sacked Zastro in the end zone for a safety to make the score 14-2. Army did have a shot at scores later in the game, but Navy came up with 2 huge interceptions to snuff those drives out. Navy's win snapped Army's 28-game winning streak. Those covering the game that day on radio called it the greatest upset of the century, and news stories the next day were still in disbelief. Arthur Daly of the New York Post wrote, "It was one of those things that strained credulity. You had to see it to believe it." And the loss did ultimately cost the Black Knights the national championship. Top-ranked Oklahoma was upset in the Sugar Bowl later in the season, but the Sooners were still named the consensus national champion. On this day in 1995, Montreal Canadiens goalie Patrick Roy felt like he was hung out to dry a little too long. So much so that the following day, he demanded to be traded. The Montreal Canadiens were playing at home against the Detroit Red Wings on this night. By this point, Roy was in his 12th season in the league. He'd been a 6-time All-Star and a 3-time Vezina Trophy winner, and considered one of the best goalies in the NHL. But on this night, well, things were not exactly going his way.
Fedorov. Larionov. Here's Primo parked in front. Larionov walking in. Patrick Roy. And he scores on the rebound. A shot loose. Larionov. Kozlov scores. Big chance to change that. Lidstrom scores. Didn't take long, did it? Coffey keeps it in at the line with now 1 minute left. Nice. And they score again. Larionov. Fedorov scores. 9-1. And the floodgates are open at the Forum.
Through a period and a half, Roy had faced 26 shots and allowed 9 goals. He gave up 5 in the first, and after the 4th and 5th, looked to the bench for help. He got nothing. And then when Sergei Fedorov scored at the 11:57 mark in the second to give Detroit a 9-1 lead, new head coach Mario Tremblay finally decided to pull Roy and send in Pat Jablonski. Now, Roy skated to the bench not happy, not because he was pulled. Instead, he was furious that he wasn't pulled after the first period. Things between Roy and Tremblay had already been a little tense that season, but now things boiled over. When Roy skated to the bench, he first leaned over and screamed at the Montreal Canadiens president, Ronald Corey, and then he had some words for Tremblay. He felt like he had been intentionally embarrassed and left to hang a little bit too long. He demanded a trade from the organization. 4 days later, the Canadiens granted Roy's request, sending him and team captain Mike Keane to Colorado for goalie Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Ruchinsky, and Andrei Kovalenko. The trade worked out great for Colorado, who went on to play in the franchise's first Stanley Cup Finals and then beat the Florida Panthers in 4 straight to win the Cup. The Avalanche would win a second Cup with Roy in goal at the end of the 2001 season. Roy would go on to play a total of 8 years with the Avalanche, and he was an All-Star 5 of those 8 years. He led the league in goals against average and shutouts in the 01-02 season at the age of 36, and then he retired after the 02-03 season. For the Canadiens, things did not exactly go south, but they weren't great either. Most Canadiens fans described the decade and a half following Roy's departure in '95 as an extended stretch of mediocrity. They missed the playoffs in 4 of their next 10 seasons and did not make it past the second round of the playoffs until 2010. They have not won the Stanley Cup since 1993, when Patrick Roy was still their number 1. And next time you think that things aren't going your way, well, keep in mind what happened on this day back in 2000, when golfer Joe Daley had the unluckiest bounce. Daley was playing in the 4th round final stage of qualifying. He was inside the cut line to earn his tour card to play the 2001 PGA Tour. His approach to the 17th green went astray, missing the green to the left. His chip wasn't great, and he left himself with a long bogey putt. He slid that by the hole, leaving about 5 feet for double. But what happened next was a crime against humanity.
You really shouldn't miss it anywhere, but gosh, it's so close to that water on the left.
Oh my, what was that?
I have never seen that, but you know something? It hit the bottom of the cup and came back out.
Have you ever seen that?
Never have seen that.
I need to see this again.
In fact,
does it not count?
It hasn't come to rest at the bottom of the hole.
Daley hit it dead center, but it hit the back edge of the plastic insert in the cup and bounced out, and it didn't count. He tapped in for a triple bogey in utter disbelief. The tragedy of the story, though, is that he missed getting his PGA Tour card by 1 shot. If his double bogey putt had gone in like it would have 999,999 times out of a million, he would have played the PGA Tour in 2001. Instead, he didn't. and he never got back to the PGA Tour after that. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. The folks at Kimberly-Clark have been making their Kleenex-branded tissue for more than a century now, but did you know that it was first developed as a filter for gas masks? Yep, during World War I, the company developed it for that purpose, but after the war, they made the product softer and a bit smoother to help ladies take off their cold cream. A little bit later, after folks started blowing their nose into them, they rebranded the product as the handkerchief you can throw away. That's going to do it for today, but I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.